Most people think that stress comes from big, obvious things like, deadlines, relationships, money, whatever the case is. But what if stress is more like noise? What if the reason that you feel exhausted isn't because your life is falling apart? It's because your nervous system has never had an opportunity for a moment of quiet. Today, we're going to talk about stress not as something that you need to manage better, but as something that your body has been adapting to every single day. Stay tuned for the episode. Welcome back to the Human Condition Podcast. I'm your host, American Council on Exercise Certified Personal Trainer Kerry Jones, and the health coaching business, The Human Condition LLC, is where I try to help people make sustainable behavior changes for their holistic health and wellness based on science and not necessarily on what is popular or trending. Because what's popular or trending, even if it is based in science, which most of the time may have had its roots in science, might not be the right thing for you if it's even healthy for you to engage in at all. This is the second episode of season 2 and also the second episode of the year. And as promised, we are going to talk about stress. Now, I know that I have talked about stress before in previous podcast episodes, but I have the benefit now of having such a small audience that it's not going to be crazy repetitive. It's not going to seem like I'm just repeating what I'm saying, but I digress because this bears to be repeated multiple times, which is why it has become part of the focus of this year's stress, sleep, and recovery. And so I'm trying to change the tone a little bit in the way that I talk about it so that the podcasts are less like me trying to educate you on what I'm interested in the moment when it comes to health and physiology and wellness, and more so something usable and tangible. And I'm hoping that that's what this season ends up being, more so than last season. But anyway, I have my show notes here in order to keep this in a relatively contained time frame. We're going to start. And so we're going to start by redefining stress. A lot of times stress is understood as being these events that happen to you, just things that occur in your life that are stressful. But when it comes to stress in the body, it is total inputs. So it's not like a one-off, like your boss yelled at you, or you threw a birthday party for a bunch of 5-year-olds. Like, that's pretty stressful. Maybe you almost got into an accident, or you did get into an accident on the way home. Those are stressful events that happen to you. But compounding, these are inputs that go into your body and they impact you on a physiological level. So we're like defining stress now as a society, on the part of society that is not very well educated on these things. We're defining these things as external, obvious things. Toxic relationships, work deadlines, financial pressure, all of these things that we have mentioned before. And fair enough, these things are all stressors. But the body doesn't sort stress in a this happened outside of my body or this happened inside of my body type of way. It categorizes everything as an input into your system. So the way that it has been explained to me, and the way that I think makes the most sense to explain it externally, is defining it as noise. And I don't mean noise as in sound. I mean noise as in like inputs into the system. I feel like I just yelled in a way that was meant to convey a point further, but I just repeated myself. Noise, like TV static noise, like radio static noise. It's just a lot. The nervous system has to process all of this noise in different ways. It has to turn on everything that needs to be turned on. It has to shut off everything that has to be shut off. It has to put things in this bucket and that bucket. And, are we in fight or flight? Is this a survival situation? But the problem is, when you have too much stress, your body perceives everything as a survival situation. So your nervous system doesn't speak a language. It doesn't speak English. It speaks in these inputs. And so it's not just what happens to you, it's what you're exposed to. So some other things that can occur that can compound the stress that you're already dealing with is having constant notifications on your phone and email, like constant noise pollution, whether it's traffic or you have the TV on all day long, or, kids crying, artificial light, overhead lighting late into the evening, skipping meals, or having erratic patterns to your day, overtraining your body, like going to the gym for 2 hours because you missed a workout the day before. You're going to add a little bit more stress to your body. And a lot of times, physical exercise stress is good stress, but you can overtrain your body. Sleep timing is another big thing. We talked about sleep a little bit in the last episode. And then you have other physiological things that could be occurring in your body due to dysfunction, whether it be from like lifestyle factors or stress alone, like gut issues, blood sugar swings, chronic systemic inflammation in the body. Those things are also considered stress. So you roll that all together in one big ball, and it's a lot to deal with. And the problem too is a lot of these things don't feel stressful. We have perceived these external events as stressors. They're stressful, but we don't perceive the constant audio inputs or the constant notifications or the staying up late. We haven't perceived those things as stress, but they are impacting us on a physiological level. Regardless of whether or not you feel them or notice them being stressors, your body is still recognizing them as such. And that's not to say that everybody is stressed or everybody is chronically stressed or everybody's nervous system is overloaded, but we're kind of leaning that way societally, in that there are too many inputs and not enough recovery time. So when you're not recognizing these things as stressors or having impact on your body, you tend to think like everything's fine, like my life's okay. Why do I feel anxious? Why do I feel tired? Why do I feel depressed? Why do I feel stressed out if everything is so fine? And that's because there are so many things happening, so many inputs that are going into the system that you may not recognize, that it's overwhelming. And then when you have that weird, like, my life is fine, I don't understand why I feel like this mindset, it tends to make you feel kind of guilty about feeling stressed, because a lot of times what we like to do is compare our lives to other people, whether it is positive or negative, because you can always think that somebody has it worse. That's fair. Validate that. That's a fine thing to think. But that doesn't negate the fact that your body is responding to life in a very stress-driven way. The way that we interpret things internally is not it's not about how dramatic the event was. It's about if we had the ability to recover fully, and if our cup is overflowing when it comes to stress. It's about how constant things are. So it's when you're thinking like my life is fine, you also have to remember that the absence of danger does not mean the presence of safety. And I don't mean in a physical violence sense. I mean, like, your body can interpret everything in like a firehouse alarm kind of way when you're already overburdened with the things that you're dealing with in life. And so just because you feel like your life is fine does not mean that your body agrees with you. Because you can function normally and still be overloaded. We have this incredible ability to we have this incredible ability to manipulate our biology in ways that we think we're doing like real good. We think we're optimizing our health. We chalk it up to biohacking, or we're trying to make our health fit our life when our life really needs to fit our health, because without health, like, what's life? But some of the examples are like, you can think that you're eating healthy, and you probably are, but it might not be enough food, or the timing might be off, or you're doing that thing where you're overtraining your body and you're not allowing yourself the ability to recover. Or, maybe you're sitting at home and it's quiet because you want to read, but like also your phone's right next to you, and, the washer's running and everything's making noise and the traffic outside. You're basically, what you're doing is you're living a schedule that works for you, but is not in line with you. And that's one of those really hard things when it comes to being a health coach, that makes it really nuanced from person to person in order to tailor it to reality, as well as optimizing health, and educating in ways that are not increasing the burden. So let's get into a little bit of the science, a little bit. I've gotten into the science before, but I really think it's important to understand kind of what's happening under the skin. So I'll just, we'll go over it. You can't willpower your way through biological responses. So we have the autonomic nervous system, which I've talked about before. I'm going to stop saying that. You might not have heard a single episode prior to this one, so I'm going to stop saying that. We have the autonomic nervous system. So you have your sympathetic and your parasympathetic nervous system. There are two branches of the same thing. The sympathetic nervous system is what has like your fight or flight response, your survival mechanics, action, urgency, mobilization. Do you have to get up and move? Do you have to do something? Are we like putting on a fire? Which was like a really extreme example. But then you have your parasympathetic nervous system, which is your rest and digest, repair, recovery, connection or reconnection. And so they constantly are, it's like a teeter-totter. Your body is constantly trying to figure out where we're leaning, which one is more optimal for the situation that we're currently in. And it's fine to be more sympathetic than parasympathetic when the situation warrants it. But the problem is there are so many inputs now when it comes to society. Like I said, with the email notifications, your phone notifications, texts, phone calls, TV shows, what's the next thing? Where are we going? Are we staying up late? All of these inputs that are coming in, by not necessarily, wholly people's faults. It's just the direction that we're moving in. We're causing an unnecessary tip towards sympathetic more often than parasympathetic. And so what we're doing is we're creating this perfect storm of circumstances where our speedometer is constantly in the red and we are not giving the engine a break. So I want to make it perfectly clear that the stress system exists for a reason. It is there. It is important. It is important for our body to experience stress when it needs to have that heightened activation, but then it's also just as important for it to come back down. The problem isn't the stress. The problem isn't experiencing stress. The problem is the never coming back down part. It's that like, if we're never coming back down, now we're living there. We're living in that heightened awareness. And so we have this ability to kind of ignore it and adapt to it in a way where we're like, everything is fine. Like that meme of the cartoon dog in the house fire where he's just sitting in the middle of it. But what I think is also equally as important as understanding what stress is in the body is understanding that it is not necessarily a personal failure. There are, and I will be bluntly honest, there are lifestyle factors in ways in which you live your life that could be contributing to your stress load. But we also have to take into account that we live in a time where things are not being optimized for our health. And I think that we're starting to recognize that. I think that we're starting to move in a better direction, but it's not fast enough, and it's definitely not coming with that public education that's required for people to understand why things are changing. So I want people to understand that cultural, environmental mismatches are just as influential in our lifestyle choices as the choices that we make personally. This is coming from like hustle culture, advancements in technology, and always trying to be connected and on in these we're tying our productivity at work to our self-worth, which is a mental health thing. And then how the fitness culture rewards like intensity. And it's like that grind culture, where if you're not disciplined and you're not throwing heavy things around and you're not like, bleeding shins or whatever the images that keep popping up, that's the kind of stuff that we have marketed to people. And so when they feel like they're not meeting that, there's a level of guilt that comes along with that as well. But that's for a different episode. So we are constantly on the verge of burnout. And burnout is essentially just the simplified way of saying that your stress cup is full. Your sympathetic nervous system is tipped in the wrong direction for so long that your body starts to physically react to how stressed we are. We built society this way. We have over-optimized too far. And so it's constantly pulling us in the wrong direction. And then on top of that, we have the mental health crisis where we are blaming people for burning out, which is just, it's wild to me that, and you don't ever see these things while you're in it. It's very easy to dismiss that type of narrative when you're in the middle of it, when that system is benefiting you, when everything seems to be working for you in a way that the moment that you step off those tracks and you're like, oh my God, I'm burnt out, then you start to recognize where all the cracks in the system are, where, your job doesn't make room for you to have recovery or everything else existing in your life. And like people try, there's the effort that's put in with these EAP counselors or whatever, but they only give you three or four appointments and that's it. But I'm going to end up going off in an emboldened and impassioned direction that I don't need to, because I am passionate about people's health, and I am also very passionate about the systems that actively work against people's health, or just manipulate them into taking their money. So let me get back to the notes. So we're going to talk about exercise as stress and medicine. Like I said before, exercise is a stressor on the body, but it's a good one, which seems counterintuitive to say after everything that I've already said. But this is a controlled stressor. It's something that we have complete control over. And honestly, some people use it as stress relief, which seems funny. It's a physiological stress that we are actively choosing to do to improve our health. It is acute. It's short term. It is what we call, when it is dosed appropriately, so meaning that you're not overtraining, but you're also not undertraining. You're activating all of the systems that you need to activate, and you're benefiting from the exercise in the way that you should be. Like I said, I think I said last episode, you're weightlifting for the sake of gaining or improving your muscle mass and your joint ligament health, or you're engaging in cardio to improve your cardiovascular health. For those reasons, but also we can use them for stress relief. So we are, and this is kind of like a little nuance when I say this, because it's going to be a super oversimplification, and I don't mean it to be misinformed in any way, shape, or form. But if I were to boil it down very, very simply, it would be you engage in exercise to teach your nervous system how to activate and then how to recover from that. It's a very basic mechanism. It's not purposeful. Like we don't engage in exercise for that reason, but that is the reason that it helps with our ability to cope with stress. And more so, the more consistent that we are, we can cope with stress better over time. When we miss that recovery portion, the same thing when it comes to your overall stress load, when you miss that recovery portion for exercise, all you're doing is adding to your stress. So make sure that you're not overtraining yourself. Make sure that you're training yourself appropriately enough that you feel like you have accomplished something, but also that you're not punishing yourself for whatever it is that you feel like you need to punish yourself for. In this case, movement is more about, in this specific case, when we're talking about stress, movement isn't just about the calories that you're burning. It's about helping train your nervous system. So if you're using it appropriately, it can increase your ability to handle stress. And I don't know in what, like if I were to simplify it, I don't know if I would simplify it as it makes your cup bigger or if it helps you figure out ways to empty the cup that you already have. I'm not really sure the metaphor I could draw for how exercise really helps with that, but what I do know is that it does, regardless of how. And when I say exercise, I am not even talking very strictly about weightlifting or cardio. I'm talking about moving your body during the day. Definitely, you should engage in structured physical activity because of the benefits that you're engaging in. You're engaging in weight training, like I said, for muscle mass and everything, and you're engaging in cardio to improve your cardio. But move more during the day, regardless of that. You could just end up walking more during the day, like low intensity, steady state cardio. It's called LISS, which should just be like a 10-minute walk. But we're looking for consistency, not intensity. Sometimes it's great to have an intense workout, but we're not looking for that intensity. Intensity is not the aim. It's not the goal. We're looking for the consistency. Consistency is what helps train your nervous system, and consistency is what helps your ability to cope. So, moving on, and I should have said this before, the top two things that have been researched for helping with stress coping is exercise and mindfulness practices. So we're going to move on to mindfulness practices. And I know when I say mindfulness, it's going to make some people who are listening to this a little skeptical because of the way that mindfulness has been positioned over the last few years in terms of like self-care and meditation and all that stuff. But mindfulness just means like being present. It's not, we're not talking about like empty your mind, which I mean is part of mindfulness, but it's not all of it. So you're trying to bring attention and awareness to your body. You're trying to be in the present moment instead of living in your brain where you're constantly either thinking of what's next or remembering something that happened in the past, or you're anxious about situations that could occur. You're trying to bring yourself back into the present moment. Like right now, I am talking into a microphone, looking at my phone, recording a podcast. I can feel the chair that I'm sitting in, which is not really the most comfortable position, but whatever. We'll work with it for now. There's light shining in my face. The floor is cold. There's heat coming from the space heater. These are all things that are going to tie me into the present moment. These are things that are occurring right now. What that does is it helps shift your body out of constant threat detection, because anything that ramps you up, drives your RPMs all the way to the top or brings your speedometer into the red, that's your body trying to assess threats or things that we need to react to or things that we have to quickly switch into our sympathetic nervous system for. And so like we've learned to just stay sympathetic so that we don't have to keep switching because we're constantly looking for the thing that is causing the danger, the anxiety point, whatever it is. So we want to practice being present and mindful in order to make sure that we can feel what it feels like to sit back on the parasympathetic side. Even if it's not perfect, which it's not going to be perfect, especially if you are one of those people that runs on 100 all the time and you're starting this practice, it's not going to be perfect. Please don't aim for perfection. Aim for consistency. Aim for something better. We're just trying to move the needle. We're not trying to be perfect. So, like I said before, like mindfulness is how to calm your thoughts and stop scanning for danger. This acts as both, coupled with exercise, acts as both a prevention method for stress, in terms of like you see a stressful event coming, you take a breath, you pause, or you're trying to train your nervous system to cope better with stress, or it can act as an intervention when you're already stressed. So these are things that you can use whenever. You don't have to time it perfectly. You just have to do the thing. Yeah, it's like I said, it's the same with exercise, prevention and intervention. I'm really glad that I print off these show notes now because it helps me it helps me not go off on tangents. And when I recognize that there's like nothing left in the segment notes, and I'm still talking, then I'm just talking for the sake of talking. So anyway, we're gonna tie this all together. Stress is not something that you eliminate in your life, and you can make certain choices to maybe, help your financial situation. You can help alleviate some stressors in your life, but the whole purpose of this and coping with stress is we're not eliminating stress. We are trying to reestablish that balance between the sympathetic and parasympathetic nervous system. And this is not a discipline problem. You can't discipline your way into coping with stress. You can't will your way through muscling through stressful times. You just can't do that. What you tend to need is lowering your amount of inputs that come into your system. It's decreasing the noise, finding a better rhythm to live in your life, whether you're just coming up with a schedule or whatever. I almost went off on a tangent there. And then also like making sure that you're anchoring yourself to more recovery signals so that when you recognize that you're feeling overwhelmed, which is like part of the thing, is just recognizing that your body systems are overwhelmed right now, and then finding the tools that work for you specifically. And you can try whatever tool you want. There's no stopping you if you're doing it to help with your stress. I'm rambling. I apologize. It's a little bit of an adjustment with the new kind of tone in which the way that we're doing the podcast. So I'm trying to not ramble like I used to. So anyway, if you've been trying harder in life and you still feel exhausted, it's not a motivation problem. Motivation is flaky at best. So it's not always going to be there. Your nervous system is asking for you to support it better. Your nervous system is asking you for more quiet, more recovery time. If you have any questions about stress or anything related to any topic that I've covered today, or any topic at all in the podcast, please feel free to reach out. You can email me, you can message me, you can leave comments on the podcast itself, whether it's on the YouTube channel, Spotify, Amazon. But anyway, this season of the podcast, it's not about, we're not moving upstream. We're not, going before the burnout. We're not trying to optimize. What we're trying to do is get back to a foundational form of health. We're trying to help the body forecast its own ability to cope with things like stress and recovery and things like that. So we're trying to build the foundation here this season. The season, like I said before, focuses on sleep, stress, and recovery. For the next episode, I'm not really quite sure what we're going to cover yet. It could be recovery, but everything is so nuanced and it's so tied together in such a way where there's bound to be overlapping episodes. What really, really helps me find direction is just doing the stuff that I do every day, working with clients and also reading the messages and comments and things that people need and want to hear, because that's really who it benefits, is the people that listen to it. It doesn't benefit me to just regurgitate this information out into a podcast. For what? So please feel free to reach out. That's what I'm here for. This is the second episode of the year, second season. Getting off of podcasts is always super awkward. Same as like getting off TikTok lives or any live in general, I get super weird about. But I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you learned something. I hope that you are taking care of yourself. And so, yeah, until next time.